So Donald Trump appeals to the U.S. Supreme Court. What's going on here? Let's talk about it in today's video. Hi, I'm Mike Reiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. I'm also a lawyer and an academic, and I'm here to help you stand up to the BS of the MAGA crowd. So the headline is that Donald Trump appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court over the order taking away the special master's authority to review the classified documents. But what exactly did he appeal? In fact, some of the early articles even got the whole status of the lawsuit wrong. As it turns out, it's kind of a technical ruling. So let's just kind of review the history here before I explain exactly what's going on here. We all remember that the National Archives discovered that there were missing documents when it went to collect all the official documents from the Trump White House. The archives then went through a process where it repeatedly asked Donald Trump to return these documents, eventually turning to the FBI to get some assistance with it. The Department of Justice then communicated directly with Donald Trump, trying to get back all the documents, each time realizing that he had withheld some documents that belonged to the federal government. And even more disturbingly, realizing that many of the documents that he had in his possession were top secret documents, including documents discussing matters regarding our nuclear secrets and regarding the identity of individuals who had helped us with espionage in foreign countries. You can imagine how valuable these documents would be to the leaders of our enemies. So the Department of Justice quickly realized that it was imperative to get back these documents as quickly as possible. After another meeting with Donald Trump, in which certain documents were turned over, and one of the lawyers even certified on behalf of Donald Trump that all the classified documents had been turned over, it turned out that no, in fact, there was still a bunch of missing classified documents. That lawyer, by the way, has had to get a lawyer of her own, and she's indicated that she's willing to cooperate with the FBI in their investigation. More bad news for Donald Trump. Anyway, after all these efforts to try to get cooperation from Donald Trump, after much agonizing, you can imagine, Merrick Garland authorized the Department of Justice to go forward and ask for a subpoena and ultimately a search warrant to try to get back these documents. Now that search, unbelievably, was leaked to the media, not by someone in the FBI, but in fact by one of Trump's supporters. The FBI simply was going there to try to seize the documents that belonged to the federal government anyway, many of which were top secret. We saw the pictures of the classified documents spread across the floor, showing just how many documents he'd taken and how insecurely they were protected. Well, after about 3 weeks, during which time the Department of Justice had plenty of time to review all the documents, Donald Trump's lawyers then file a request with Judge Aileen Cannon, a judge who they basically shopped all throughout Florida to try to get this case in front of. She, of course, is one of the least qualified members of the judiciary, according to the American Bar Association. And she, of course, was appointed by Donald Trump for the simple fact that she was a reliable supporter. And she certainly proved herself to be that in this case, where much to the consternation of just about everybody in the legal community, she granted Donald Trump's request for a special master and ordered the FBI and the Department of Justice to stop the review of all the documents they had in their possession, including classified documents, despite the fact that they'd already looked at them. Now, if there's one thing we can be happy that Judge Cannon ordered, it's that when Donald Trump asked that the taxpayers have to foot half the bill for the special master, Aileen Cannon refused and instead ordered Donald Trump to pay the full freight, which only makes sense considering the fact that he's the one who wanted it in the first place. At any rate, we've all heard what an embarrassment the appointment of the special master, a special master who was recommended by Donald Trump and his lawyers, by the way, and it's become an embarrassment because of the fact that the special master has asked Donald Trump's lawyers to back up their public statements with actual evidence that he can review in court. Trump's lawyers, of course, ran back to Judge Aileen Cannon, who pretty much immediately set aside all of the special master's requests as being beyond the scope of his authority. I guess she was making up for the fact that she ordered Donald Trump to pay the full freight of the special master. Anyway, the Department of Justice filed an emergency appeal with the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, which covers Florida, requesting that the 11th Circuit allow them to at least review and move forward on their analysis of the classified documents, because there's absolutely no basis for Donald Trump to claim that those belong to him. I mean, he may have a claim to attorney-client privilege or to some type of property right to, say, his personal documents that were in his possession at Mar-a-Lago. But he certainly doesn't have that right with respect to any classified documents. Well, in a stunning 29-page opinion issued by the 11th Circuit by a panel of 3 judges, 2 of whom were appointed by Donald Trump, actually, the court completely rebuked Judge Cannon's order and stated that there was absolutely no basis for the special master to have to review classified documents and no basis to stop the FBI and the Department of Justice from reviewing those classified documents. Now, in addition to that request, there's another request filed by the Department of Justice, which is still pending, to set aside the entire order requiring the appointment of a special master and allowing the FBI to go forward as it was duly authorized to from the beginning. Well, in the meantime, then, Donald Trump filed an appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. And in that appeal, interestingly enough, he's making a very narrow technical argument. It's an argument that would not stop the FBI from continuing their review of these documents. So frankly, it's hard to imagine how it would help him at all. The argument to the U.S. Supreme Court is simply that the 11th Circuit lacked the jurisdiction to take those classified documents out from being under the review of the special master. Donald Trump and his lawyers are not asking that the review of the documents by the FBI be stopped, simply that the special master also be able to review them, because they claim that's beyond the scope of what the Department of Justice had asked the 11th Circuit to do. Well, we have to remember, the U.S. Supreme Court does not hear anywhere near all the cases that people request it to hear. In fact, in a given year, they'll get as many as 10,000 cases submitted to them, and they'll typically only review about 100 or so. So the vast majority of them, they don't even pay attention to. For the court to grant a review of a case, they have to do something called grant certiorari, or sometimes just referred to as granting cert, which is a Latin term that basically means the Supreme Court will review the lower court's decision. If the Supreme Court declines to grant cert, then the lower court's decision will stand. In other words, if the U.S. Supreme Court wants to allow the ruling by the 11th Circuit to remain in force, they just have to say, no, we don't really want to review this. And the truth of the matter is, that's how they've typically handled most of the requests by Donald Trump. You have to remember, this is not the first time that Donald Trump has requested the U.S. Supreme Court to intervene and stop him from having to release records to prosecutors and to other authorities investigating him. Each time that he has done so, the U.S. Supreme Court has basically declined to step in and said, no, we're not going to get in the way of that. Much to the consternation of Donald Trump, I'm sure, given the fact that he appointed 3 of the U.S. Supreme Court justices, and allegedly, the U.S. Supreme Court has a 6-3 conservative majority. Nevertheless, my expectation is that the Supreme Court is just going to kind of step back and decline to review this case, saying that it really doesn't want to get involved in this, and the 11th Circuit decision is fine. Again, though, I really don't know what Donald Trump will get out of the U.S. Supreme Court even granting his petition. I mean, after all, that won't stop the FBI and the Department of Justice from moving forward in their investigation, which appears to be really what his goal is, which is to stall any progress and hopefully run out the clock on the Biden administration. That appears to be what his legal strategy is. And in fact, reports are that even within Donald Trump's legal team, there's an ongoing battle where certain attorneys are urging that they cooperate with the Department of Justice, and other attorneys arguing that they should continue to fight with the Department of Justice. And as it turns out, the ones who want to keep fighting are the ones who have won out. Not terribly surprising knowing Donald Trump. So the only thing I can think is that Donald Trump's looking for some type of PR victory, where like with the Mueller report, which clearly stated that Mueller and his team believed that Donald Trump had illegally obstructed justice, that he walked around claiming he'd been totally exonerated by the report, relying upon the biased and misleading press conference by Bill Barr right after the report was released. Or how they celebrated Judge Cannon's ruling that a special master should be appointed, even though that it didn't say anything about the merits of the case. I think they just want to get some ruling that they can say, oh, the U.S. Supreme Court sided with us. Obviously, this is just a witch hunt. Even though a ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court would say no such thing. Well, in addition to this investigation over his potentially acts of espionage by keeping top secret documents in his possession. Potentially, Donald Trump's biggest liability could be coming from a grand jury investigation that's ongoing in Georgia over his attempts there to overturn the election. If you want to hear more about that investigation, why don't you check out this video that I did a while ago talking about the prosecutor and her plans there. I'll see you then. In the meantime, let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.